Hi, guys. Before we begin the episode, I want to tell you about an amazing website that could help you get your health back. I know that sounds like a big statement to make, and I know a lot of you out there have been concerned about your health, especially with this COVID jab, with the toxicity in there, with the shedding of the COVID vaccine. All of us are concerned. We're seeing people fall ill, die prematurely, and it's really gotten bad. There's a website that could change your life and potentially even save your life. I'm not going to talk too much about it. Just please go on there, watch the videos, sign up to watch the videos, and learn how you could get your health back to the way it was prior to COVID and even better.
Colonel Raiklin, it's an honor to be talking to you about some matter of great significance. Would like to know what you know about COVID-19 during the Trump administration, early 2020. And I understand that I've heard rumor that the then Vice President Pence was put in charge of the task force. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people are skeptical about Mike Pence. Some people are okay with him. Some people are unsure. Some people are like, that guy's a complete toxic, feckless, stone cold, gutless, coward, simp, right? Well, I'm of the opinion of the latter. And I'm quoting basically Steve Bannon, who you probably hear some making some noise in the background from his booth. But bottom line, to answer your question, when you say COVID-19, I think the more appropriate term to use is the CCP-19, meaning the Chinese Communist Party's Fauci-funded lab incident that was released for the whole world and public to be toxified by in the year 2019 of our Lord. Okay? So CCP-19. Now, having framed it in that way, you asked the question about what was failed Vice President Mike Pence's role on that CCP-19, White House CCP-19 task force,
What was
is the
his role?
question.
Yes.
So his role, it was to be the head of the CCP-19 task force. Now, what does that mean? That means, as a former president of the RGA, Republican Governors Association, when he was the failed governor of Indiana, he had relationships with a lot of the governors. And as the White House head of CCP-19, he was the one to determine who would then receive federal funding, support, and policy on everything related to the destruction of American society, the constitutional order, and the destruction of our economic system as we know it up to that point. Here are some indicators and evidence of that. As it applies to products and doling out contracts, that head of the task force decided which states would get ventilators and how many ventilators, right? And then later on, who and which entities and states would receive the face toilets, known as the asphyxiation covers, or also known as the oxygen depleters, also known as the unsafe and ineffective emergency use authorized product called face coverings. And in that process, there were companies that received contracts to create these devices to then distribute it out. So then money was being made in these decisions, right? And who was the shadow governor that was assisting Mike Pence in this decision making process? A guy by the name of Jared Kushner. Don't believe me. Look it up yourselves. Use your preferred and favorite search engine. Yes, you will find it and see it. So those two individuals were very well entrenched into the money making scheme as it relates to the CCP-19 White House task force. I'll pause there.
All right. Well, a lot of questions. So what happens next after they begin to dole out these contracts? This is an early 2020. Let's get a timeline here. So when does the task force first meet?
So initial indications within the intel community as it relates to this start in the November, December 2019 timeframe. That's when I started to stock up on about a year, 18 months worth of food and supplies because I suspected something was about to break and they're pushing it in the direction of something wild.
All right.
March of 2020 is when the shutdowns happened, right? The lockdowns, the forced illegal governmental shutdowns and lockdowns. They, the censorship industrial complex, framed it as quarantine. Good old beloved failed Vice President Mike Pence called it 2 weeks to stop the spread. Remember, 15 days to stop the spread, and he was up there in his pious stance with his buttoned-up jacket, and he was standing right beside President Trump at the daily CCP 19 task force briefing to say, he would be like this: 2 weeks to stop the spread, which turned into 2 years of subversion of our constitutional order, destruction of our economy, and then the successful coup d'etat that occurred on January 6th of 2021 when Mike Pence presided over the illegally conducted and illegally certified 2020 election, which was ushered in by the CCP-19 Wuhan Institute of Virology lab incident that changed the way in which states conducted their elections, violating all norms and principles to thus conduct a coup d'etat of which Mike Pence spearheaded.
Let me take you back to November 2019. So, taking you back to November 2019. So there was an intel report that came out of the Pentagon around that time that maybe this is coming from a laboratory. Because when you're referencing, I asked you the timeline, and you're referencing November, December. That sounds to me about the time that DOD was putting the word out that this was probably a leak from a red Chinese lab. So my question is, was the then vice president involved in that intel report that came out of the DOD? Or was he brought in after the report came out? Did he have no knowledge of it, no contribution to that first report?
Great question. I don't know the exact answer to that. I just don't know. But I will tell you this and frame it this way: the National Security Council includes the vice president. The vice president is technically supposed to know and be briefed on all the most sensitive, high level intelligence related to everything in our national security ecosystem. Okay? That would be my answer.
So there's a good chance that he did know, is what you're saying. Good chance he knew.
That's something for Mike Pence to answer to. I'd be happy to ask him that question if you can set up a meeting with him.
Let me ask you another question around that time frame. So we're in February 2020. A magazine, a science magazine article, talks about the origination, or the invention, I should say, of spike protein. That Barney Graham, I believe, was involved in this. Have you seen this article? February of 2020. It was in Science magazine, and he's telling us that, if I understand this correctly, the inventor of the spike protein is saying that he has invented a spike protein which is far more offensively aggressive. It can attach to what we call ACE2 receptors in a cell, but that it also seems to have strong resistance against antibodies. So is the Pence Cove, the CCP, just calling it the CCP 19 task force, aware of information such as this, which is in the public domain, that doesn't seem to require a degree in the field, in the relevant sciences? Are they aware of this kind of information? Are they talking about this kind of information, to your knowledge?
So you raise a good point that to answer that, I'm going to back up and frame it a little bit more strategic than just that example. A couple of other individuals that need to be mentioned in this discussion are Anthony Fauci was always there with Mike Pence at the CCP 19 task force. Dr. Deborah Birx was also in this discussion. Hindsight now being disclosed with all the evidence, with a couple of books written by RFK Jr., The Real Anthony Fauci, the book written recently, published October of 2023 by Senator Rand Paul, and the testimony and the subpoenas and the colloquy conducted by Senator Rand Paul with his focus on the origins of what he calls COVID-19, again, CCP-19. All those deliberative interactions between Peter Daszak, another person, you heard of these names,
Yes.
and Dr. Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx. All of that, when you read through it in detail, shows a level of corrupt cover-up to basically cover up for the Wuhan lab origins theory, and instead make it look like zoonotic, thank you, zoonotic also known as it was a natural jump from some sort of bat soup in the Wuhan wet market over to a human being. All fraudulent, corrupt lies, crimes, right? And so the reason why I bring that up is because Mike Pence headed up the organization that was tasked with determining how to address something by people that were involved in covering up their own complicity in it. And I argue that the information by the time it got to President Trump was already curated, manipulated, coerced, conflict of interested information that would protect those that were involved in the scheme exactly the same way as we talked about in every single censorship industrial complex conversation that was censored and banned for the whole world and in America to hear and see on social media and big media going back to 2018.
All right.
Can I ask a quick question about this? Because when you're talking about the whole transference of this, from a bat, it came from a bat. That's the story. I mean, we used to hear stories about how AIDS came from humans having sex with monkeys. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it kind of seems like a similar narrative that this was something that occurred because of some kind of animal connection. I mean, and we know about Fauci's involvement in AIDS. So is this like what it's an old school narrative that they're just trying to recycle?
Perfect questions. I love these questions because you're teeing me up so perfectly in the sense that when you talk about AIDS and HIV, we got to go back to who was the director of the NAIAD back then that was promoting what's it called?
The drug that was had a huge side effect.
Yeah, what was the name? The AZT or something?
Yeah, and it was killing. It was basically
Killing people. So he's selling a product that was killing people, and then he was blaming something else for it, right?
Yeah.
It was AIDS, so I guess it's not working as effectively as we want it to. Meanwhile, it was a drug that was killing people off.
Yeah.
And
Same story.
same story as it applies to today, right? With the emergency use authorized products. Meanwhile, he's getting money hand over fist. Not only he was the highest paid government official, right? But he was also making money on the side for basically teeing up these contracts and deals. So, which begs the question: how much interest and influence, or financial gain did Mikey Pence receive, and Jared Kushner receive as part of this scheme? Okay. Now, yeah.
Well, I have another question. We take it back again to early 2020. So we have this task force that the vice president is overseeing. About this time, are there any similar task forces forming or have been formed on the Hill? Is in the House and the Senate, is anyone also running their check and balance against what the executive branch is doing? Do they have in a sense, so what you're calling it a CCP-19 task force, are there one or more of those formed on the Hill in early 2020?
It's a good question. So in early 2020, let's see here. So that would have been the 116th Congress. Not quite yet. In the 117th Congress, I believe, is when it started. The COVID committee in the House.
There was a permanent Select Intelligence Committee that started to follow this, but I'm wondering when was the first task force or committee subcommittee formed on this issue? When was it, or which one? So
COVID oversight.
okay, this is on the Hill now.
I'm just trying to see when it was created. I'm trying to remember. This was on the Hill.
Okay, and they're calling it a COVID oversight. That's the official.
I believe it was the 117th Congress when they started it, and essentially that was created in order to protect big pharma to be able to distribute its clot shots, its death jabs, its DNA mutilation injection devices, whether it was the mRNA Moderna variant, the Moderna mutilation variant, I like to call it, or the Pfizer fail variant. And in the instance of J&J, it was just a simple clot shot heart exploding device. So going back to kind of what I was saying, the reason why I'm calling him that is because it's not based on any animosity for these companies. It's not based on any libelous intent or nature. It's based on the Centers for Disease Control's own database known as VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. And thus far, there are over 38,000 murders that have resulted from the DNA mutilation injections in the case of Moderna or Pfizer fail, and in the case of J&J, right? So Pfizer is the biggest death-creating pharma product according to CDC's own data and reporting. In the collective, between those three shots, 38,000 people have been murdered, more than any other injection known as vaccines actually approved over the course of the 30-year history of this database combined. Combined.
I have a quick question. VAERS, I've heard, is actually underreporting. So when you're saying close to 40,000,
that was exactly the question I was going to put to him. What is this multiplier? Because he's giving us a number, but I've heard that we have to multiply that number to get to the actual number. So I would like to hear what he's heard, what multiplier he would assign to that number.
Great question. So 38,000 is what's reported. And as you say, there's a Harvard study that came out in 2010, I believe,
Yes, that's right.
that talked about how VAERS is underreported by a factor of 100. So 1%. So let's just use the range of potential deaths and murders and destruction caused by these death jabs is the 38,000 at a minimum, and then multiply that by 100. 10 would be 380,000. 100 would be 3.8 million. And if you listen to Brett Weinstein, who's been on Tucker talking about this, been on Alex Jones, and he basically uses the figure 17 million globally. 17 million. Let's go back and do the numbers. World War I, World War II, Korean War, American Civil War, every single American war combined. What are those numbers? It's not 17 million.
Yeah, no, I think all of them combined is about 2/3 of a million. A little bit, maybe a little bit more than that. Well, I do have this number on the top of.
When you say crimes against humanity and genocide, Anthony Fauci is the biggest mass murderer known in human history, in my opinion.
Could well be. Now, if we go back, we've talked about some casualty numbers. If we go back to World War II, this number is this is on the tip of my tongue. It had 400,000 combat deaths in Europe and the Pacific combined. Now, according to the CDC, tell me if I'm right or wrong here. What I hear from the CDC is that since 2019, so that's the last 4 years, 2020 and on, there have been approximately 1.6 million people who died
In the United States.
in the United States alone that we would not have expected to die had there not been a pandemic. Now, they go on to say, well, we don't attribute all 1.6 million to CDC. We attribute about 1.1 million to the CDC. To the COVID. To COVID.
Due to the CCP-19 virus.
That's right.
The lab incident.
Right,
the bio lab incident.
Yeah, let's go back again and get the context again. So the CDC is saying 1.6 million have died that should not have died since 2019, and we believe 1.1 million or 1.2 million of this 1.6 million came from what you're calling the CCP-19
Fauci-funded lab bio incident.
Right. So they're saying essentially all these deaths have been caused by that incident. So what we're saying then is if we adjust for population, we've lost 400,000 people in Europe and Pacific. If we had as many people living then as we have now, that means we've lost 1 million people to Hitler and Hirohito. But now here's the CDC telling us we've actually lost half again more, right? 1.6 million, not roughly that number. This is worse than what Hitler and Hirohito have done to us.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
This is just deaths. What about all the serious adverse events?
Now let's take it back real quick. When you talked about the, where do we go with this? Remember we talking about the Intel assessment?
We're way back November. We're talking November 2019.
So there was an assessment. It was classified internal, but then it was published for the public to read, see, and hear, unclassified. Right. It was the origins of COVID assessment. You've read that, I'm sure. And so when you look at that, and it talks about the two different theories behind the origins of COVID. One was the zoonotic
theory,
which was the bat soup theory.
Bat soup theory jumped out of a bat soup.
And then it's just ridiculous. That was the one that was promulgated by the censorship industrial complex as the prevailing narrative through big media and through big tech.
That is correct.
Who was promoting it? I argue it was your Brian Auten at headquarters at FBI Foreign Influence Task Force, working with his FBI San Francisco.
Say that again very slowly now.
Brian Auten, BrianAuten.
Okay.
Supervisory Intel Analyst Brian Auten on the FIDF, Foreign Influence Task Force, communicating with his buddy that he worked with when he was on the Crossfire Hurricane team.
This is FBI?
This is an FBI analyst. Working with his buddy in the San Francisco field office, Elvis Chan and Joseph Pientka III. Again, this is my assessment. I don't have 100% on this one. But I've been pretty accurate for the last 6 years. Like damn near 100%. So I'm not 100%, but I've been pretty. Elvis Chan and Joseph Pientka III. Pientka. Both in the San Francisco field office of the FBI. Now, who were they coordinating with over at to be able to convert and coerce Facebook and Twitter 1.0? Well, they had an embed over at Twitter 1.0 in their legal office by a guy by the name of Jim Baker, who was formerly the general counsel of the FBI when Joe Pientka was the senior ops guy and Brian Auten was the senior analyst on Crossfire Hurricane, which was the illegal spying of the Trump campaign operation. You see how this incestuous web continues? Anyhow, as it relates to the assessment of the origins, two theories. One zoonotic, one was the lab incident. And when you look at the details of the unclassified report on whether or not it was a deliberate lab incident or an accidental lab incident, one analyst said that there could be a possibility that it was a deliberate lab incident, which begs the question, was it a deliberate lab incident?
First, I thought,
Because it just said lab incident. It could have been deliberate or accidental.
who was this analyst now? You said that.
That information is classified, not publicly available. I don't know what it is, but it would be classified to know what that is. I could probably find out. I just haven't gone down that path. Well, how could I find out? I've spent 25 years in the system. I could probably ask the right things. And I spent 3.5 years teaching analysts to be professional analysts to write products like the one that we just described. That gives me a little more credibility. I should say more credibility than most. Fair? Is that fair? All right, so
Now, so at this time now, the Trump administration's riding high. I mean, they're en route to another re-election. The economy is doing very well, and now this breaks, and now you're giving us all these connections. So can you put this in a high? I think you're going that way. Why don't you take us to the top? Take this elevator all to the top floor.
So when you have a president that's focused on American principles and American citizens and American interests first, that goes in direct contravention to the now country that is trying to supplant America's global hegemony, which is the Chinese Communist Party. Okay? So then the Chinese Communist Party, leveraging the international institutions known as the World Economic Forum, known as the World Health Organization, known as the United Nations, is essentially buying off, bribing, right, those key individuals like your Mr. Tedros and your Mr. Klaus Schwabs of the world, and they see that there's a threat to them in the form of a person that's leading a movement that will crush them in the form of Donald Trump. You have to come up with a scheme that you publish for the whole world to see and hear. And what was that scheme?
Well, you just heard it.
What was it?
CCP 19 is what you're telling us.
Well, it was even said that they even did a trial run of it. What was that called? In I can't remember when it was, in 2017 or 2018, they ran an exercise, a global exercise. Simulation. There you go. What was it called?
No, you're talking about Event 201 in October 2019. Oh, that's 2019. 2019.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, well, the timing is a little too
So
close for comfort.
Event 201.
Right.
You heard about this?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Event 201, while they were simulating it, after they're done with the simulation, they're ready to rock and roll, they implement it. So they go from planning to briefing it to then executing it. Event 201 was executed in the form of this is my view on this, CCP-19 lab incident, which then allowed the censorship industrial complex to force and coerce and co-opt our China first friends such as Mike Pence and the Democrats to go ahead and conduct an illegal election to guarantee a Trump loss.
I got a question. I know this is going to be controversial, especially since you worked in government, right?
Please.
But we've heard about these kind of like what you're describing as war gaming, gaming out whatever's going to happen, right? We've heard this sort of thing, was occurring on 9/11, for example. Like, right, there was some kind of testing going on at 9/11 during the London bombing in the subway. They were doing some kind of coincidentally test that day. Now, tell me, as a layman, I don't know, to me that seems mighty coincidental, just like a lot of the coincidences we're talking about. Do you have any comments on that topic?
Well, first off, many people say there are no coincidences.
Oh, no, I don't believe there are any coincidences at all.
Specifically, I can't talk intelligently on London. I've not gone down that deep dive rabbit hole. I think most of the questions that I get as it applies to 9/11 on this particular subject is Tower 7.
Yeah,
right?
Tower 7, Pentagon. I mean, I've seen what like a plane that falls to the ground looks like. That's not what UA 93 looked like.
Back when that all happened, I was like, no, this is legit. I believe the media and this and that. But having witnessed and studied the last 10 years and having a first and second row seat to it, again, from 2014, so 9/11 was 13 years prior to that, it begs the question, was that a intentional, staged, and deliberate action in order to be able to take more civil liberties? Because what happened after that? DHS is created. You have the TSA. You have all this
Patriot Act.
You have Fourth and Fifth Amendment complete gang raping of American citizens through that program.
And then you look at things like, what they're trying to convince JFK to do with using planes to create a terrorist incident in order to attack Cuba. I mean, this just seems like it's in the old playbook. And finally, after like 60 or 50 years of pushing, they got their way. Then you look at Project for a New American Century from 98. And it seems as though that's what they're waiting for. And lo and behold, coincidentally, it happens the minute the guy becomes president.
And again, going back to the 9/11 piece, a lot of people ask what happened to Building 7. It was kind of weird. I'll say this. Why don't you go ahead and look up what was in Building 7?
Yeah. All the CIA files, probably the $270 trillion that went missing the day before.
Okay, next question.
No comments on that?
I didn't say that.
The next question.
Yeah, what's your next question?
I mean, you're great at interviewing yourself, bro. What's the next question?
I like this. I just said I like the sounds you just made. You see how I safely answer things?
I love that. Very, very, very diplomatic. Yeah.
Without getting myself in trouble.
No, I'm just enjoying the band.
All right. All right. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode. This is actually a non-conventional episode, but nonetheless a great episode, and always a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you very much.